At the panel, you see only the three of us. We miss our colleague from Bulgaria who couldn't have joined us. I was just told that that because of some problems with the flights. But we are still having my colleagues, Kia Sophie Stieber, and Christian Bluth. And I believe that the three of us are going to make the discussion. With your help, the possibility of posting questions to us is on. I also hope that there's going to be a poll in the meantime, so we'll be trying to refer to your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. To talk about my colleagues, both are very well educated, very expertise, with a great expertise. Kia Sophie is a lawyer like me with the same specialization in European law, and I'm really happy to have her here, as some legal issues probably would come up in the course of our discussion. She is working for Hans Seidel Foundation as a senior analyst for European integration, European international law, civil rights, and the constitutional state. And Christian is a member of Global Economic Dynamics team of the Bertelsmann Stiftung. And that's the program where he focuses on topics related to European economic integration and global trade. He's also a PhD from the University of Cambridge and a master's from Sciences Po Paris. And Christian is going to give us an opening speech, a kind of keynote, to provoke the thinking and the discussion. So, Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much first for the invitation to this very nice conference. I'm delighted to be here. Since I'm the only economist in this round, I suppose I'll do what I was invited to do and contribute to the debate about Schengen in economists' point of view. But don't worry, it's not going to be all figures. There will be some figures, but not many. And I'll try to focus on the rationale and on highlighting why Schengen is actually a very important feature and a cornerstone of the European integration. Actually, why are we talking about Schengen? Schengen is not a particularly new policy in the European Union. It has been in place for quite a long time, and in this time it has been a policy that has been probably sort of people's favorite in Europe. It has been rarely criticized, and most of the mentionings of it were fairly positive. What has changed? The migration crisis of, well, I'm inclined to say of 2015, but of course it is not fundamentally solved yet, has exposed some flaws potentially, or some dangers, to choose a more neutral word, with the Schengen Agreement. At a certain moment at the end of last year, it looked like the whole system would collapse like a card house. Like more and more countries were closing their borders, raising fences, and doing all those things that Schengen, that should establish the free movement of people and make Europeans feel together, actually is contrary to. In the light of that situation, we as the Bertelsmann Stiftung felt the need to state the obvious and to show that Schengen is not merely a symbol of European integration, it is a functional part, and that Schengen is making a substantial contribution to economic integration and to prosperity. And we should not forget that, because that is too often forgotten in the debate. So let me say a few words on how we benefit from Schengen and how costly it would be if we left this mechanism. Now, if we introduce border controls on a large scale, that will of course mean higher costs for production. You all have heard the term just-in-time delivery. This is a key principle of modern production, and it's becoming ever more important. If you introduce border controls, you raise transport costs because all the lorries have to wait at the border to be checked, which is making transport more lengthy, less reliable, and will thus disrupt production chains across Europe. Higher production costs, of course, for consumers mean higher prices because, well, the imported goods from other countries will, of course, be more expensive because of transport costs, and even those products being produced domestically will rise in prices because very often they rely on preliminaries that come from other countries. If customers face higher prices, they'll be able to buy less. There'll be less consumption and less demand. And that is going to declining economic growth and prosperity. These are just the direct effects. There are indirects to follow in a second round, which I'll describe in a second, but for the time being, let us stick with those direct effects that I have described. We have done some calculations to get an idea how important these effects might actually be. We have examined two scenarios. One is a conservative scenario where we assume that prices will be rising by 1%, and a more pessimistic scenario where we assume the rise of the prices to be 3%. Now, this may not sound like very much, but the effects are substantial. For the EU 24 countries, for which our model has reliable data, between 2016 and 2025, we would get an accumulated loss of growth in the height of 470 billion euros. And that is the conservative scenario. In the pessimistic scenario, the number would be, for the same time period, 1,430 billion euros. Now, it's very hard to imagine what these large numbers actually mean. So let me give you a comparison. The pessimistic scenario is about of the order of the GDP of Italy. So you can see that these costs are quite substantial. I would also like to add that since this conference deals very much with issues regarding the Visegrad countries, that those countries will be particularly badly affected by border controls. Especially Poland and the Czech Republic, but in all those countries, the loss in annual growth will be higher than in the EU average. And that is something for policymakers to consider. Also, countries outside the Schengen area, such as the United Kingdom, will be affected because they already use preliminary products that come from the Schengen area, which will be more expensive, and hence lead to increased production costs. Actually, the United Kingdom, according to our estimations, is going to be more negatively affected than Germany would be, for example. So far about the direct costs. But there are also indirect costs, which happen in a second round. Of course, when prices rise, wages will rise as well, thus making, in a second or consecutive turn, production even more expensive. So you enter a vicious spiral of price explosion, which nobody can want. Investment in the Schengen area is likely to decrease because Schengen products in Schengen will be less competitive because of higher prices. Also, demand outside of the European Union is likely to drop. You can imagine that this will substantially weaken the position of the EU on the world markets. Finally, there will also be negative consequences for tourism. The Schengen visa process will no longer be operational. The judicial cooperation and the exchange of security-relevant information will come to a stop. And most importantly, the single market functions only with Schengen. you cannot, well, you could theoretically have a single market with border controls, but that system would not work very well because of the prices you incur every time you cross a border. What Europe needs is more economic convergence, and that cannot be achieved with border controls which will essentially hinder this convergence to take place. Schengen is therefore a cornerstone of the single market, and the single market is the main propeller of integration in Europe. So if we lose Schengen, this will have not only severe economic consequences, but also severe second-round political consequences. Let me finish my introductory statement with some more general thoughts about the nature of borders, what purposes borders serve, what the strength of border protection is linked to. A border is a delimitation between the sphere that you can control and the sphere that you cannot control. It serves as a protection against something that may come from the sphere that you cannot control. And obviously, the strength of the border depends very much on how likely you think it is that something negative will come from this other sphere that you cannot control. Now, in Europe, I would say we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid of what might come from other EU countries. We engage in close cooperation. We entertain very good relations. So the case of strong borders in Europe is not a strong one. In external borders, that is a completely different issue, and I believe that this is an area where further cooperation would make sense. But it is deeply worrying to me to see that instead, well, that maybe not instead, but that within Europe, borders are rising again, because that fundamentally means that we are afraid and distrusting of what might come from the other country. And that is not a good sign for the project of European integration, and that should not be happening. How do we respond to that? I would say we need to build trust again, because if we trust each other, then we can reduce again the strength of border controls. And trust can be done through more cooperation, to better listening to each other, and to taking each other's positions into account when formulating and implementing policies. So my answer to the general question of this conference, better together? Yes, absolutely. We may need to coordinate more. We need to become better at working together, but we are better together than we are on our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. That was very inspiring. Just want to double check. Have I understood it correctly? You're saying that we are going to lose 470 billion euro in a perspective of 2025?
Yes.
Only because of quitting the Schengen and introducing the borders?
Yes. And that is the conservative scenario.
Which is, I believe, a kind of substantial argument to start this discussion about. And I would have a guess that the money and the numbers of financial volumes are always speaking to our imagination, which is probably making this whole debate also so emotional. But let me start in my way. My way is always to start with a legal basis and to check out where we are, what is already there, what is working, what is not working. And Kia, could you please give us a short assessment of how you see it? Because we have lots of legal provisions already on the ground. We know that how the Schengen system is working. We know how to deal with those that are seeking for asylum, with the refugees. everybody is saying that there would be any problem with the Schengen, and that the Schengen would not be discussed if not the migration flows coming to Europe during the last few months. So where we are, Kia?
Well, we we have the Schengen border code and the Schengen border acquis, which gives us the possibility to regulate who is coming into Europe and who is traveling through Europe. Like in general, you have to have a visa as a third country member to get into the EU. If you don't have that, there are certain exceptions that you can ask asylum for and a few other ones. So we do have that Schengen acquis that regulates a lot. And then within the EU, we have the Dublin system that regulates what we do with refugees that can ask for asylum, which member state is responsible for decision making. And so I believe we do have a very good legal system that we can build on. We just have to restore compliance with EU law. That is the problem that I see at the moment.
But referring to the external border, because it shouldn't be any problems with the internal borders, right? I mean, we do not see them. I was myself traveling today from Bratislava, and it is such a nice experience. You know, you just cross the border and you have the plate announcing that you are now in Česká republika, and that's it. So I don't think that there is a problem with the internal borders. The problem is that the external borders are not well protected. Would that be a justified thesis?
Well, see, I think that national countries within the EU rebuild their national borders has mainly to do with the not sufficient protection of the external borders. So we need to come back, or not come back, we need to come to the point that we can protect our external borders to take back the internal border controls.
Okay, and Christian, you said that that this protection is so important for the definition of a nation. I mean, if you see the border as really the characteristic of the territory that we are taking the control of and taking the responsibility in front of the citizens. Shifting a bit from law and from economics to politics, would you say that that this is exactly that the political leaders are lacking courage in saying that, I'm sorry, we do not control anymore the borders. That's why we prefer to close it, to have at least visibly a better symbol of that we are still ruling inside of our countries?
I don't think we have a problem with actually protecting the borders when we want to. I mean, that's the one thing we have seen, that if a country really wants to protect their border, they can do it. What we have, I think, is a coordination failure. We have several free-riding effects that overlap each other. Mm-hmm. What we have had for many years, and without really this being very prominent in the public debate, we've had a free-riding effect of people from countries very far away from the external borders of the European Union that are in the happy situation that the only thing they need to monitor is their airports and maybe ports if they have any, and they can leave the protection of the EU's external border, which is also protecting them, to those countries who have an EU external border. And the initiatives to work together to protect the external borders have probably not been sufficiently ambitious. The other free-riding effect is something that you saw in the wake of the migration crisis. Given that many of those refugees wanted to go to Germany or Sweden and not stay at the countries that are at the external borders of the European Union, they were just let through. thus, again, free riding on those countries that had previously free ridden on the countries at the border. How can you solve this coordination failure? I think the first free riding problem of those being far away from the border, relying on other people, was very short-sighted. Because if ever there is a substantial problem at the border, then substantial resources will be needed to protect it. In a similar vein, I don't think it is maybe very helpful that the borders controls are done by people who only take their own nation's concern into account. If you could internalize the considerations of all countries if you had a common protection of borders. If, say, not Greek officers were making the decision what to tolerate and what not, but EU officers, they would look at it with a completely different incentive structure. And I think this would lead to a different policy outcome. So I think this is not about the capacity to protect borders. We can do that, as we have seen, but the willingness and the coordination that we need to do it.
Right, but we didn't. That's the
yes,
thing.
we didn't. That's right. But well, we are thinking on how to deal with the present situation and maybe come to a
we
better
will
outcome.
definitely discuss the ideas for the future, but I was always purely legally admiring the arguments given by the Hungarian government at certain point that the only thing they are doing is actually fulfilling the legal obligations that nobody else is doing. And going back again to the legal provisions, we have, you said also, we have the situation that Schengen as a part of the EU, not a symbol anymore, as a part of this European system, is seriously threatened because we are facing huge flows of migration. We are facing crowds of people physically entering the European Union, and to some point also due to our failure, our European failure of not obeying the law that we have. Kia, my legal interpretation is just too controversial. It should be for the purpose maybe of the panel, but
so your question is if we failed
to obey European law.
To obey. Partly, I think, but on the other hand, I think it was a natural scenario because there were so many refugees coming into the EU in Greece, in Italy, and all the other border countries that it was just not possible for the countries, for the border countries, to stop them and to give them the procedures, the asylum procedures that they should.
But it was I'm sorry to interrupt. My point is that it was not that sudden. I remember the previous European Commission with President Barroso, all of the commissioners on Lampedusa Island.
It wasn't.
The pictures of commissioners among the coffins of people who died because of trying to reach Europe. And the European Commission is new for 2 years now. So my point is that we should not be that much surprised. I mean, there were many signals that this is already on, and this is just getting stronger and stronger. This, I mean, the flows of people, right? With all of these aspects of smuggling people, of people dying in a sea. So isn't it one of the grounds of of our today's philosophical discussions, what is the future of Schengen? Is it one of these failures coming from the fact that we have not respected Schengen so far? That we were just, so happy of having the free movements of people, goods, capitals, everything, our treaty values. And this lack of respect was somehow the lack of obeying the law properly, in a sense of not implementing the external border controls, not implementing all of these solutions that were important for the proper asylum system.
Well, I think you're totally right. To a certain degree, it could have been foreseen. I mean, when you just read the newspaper daily, then you could have seen what's going on in Syria and North Africa and other countries that the refugees coming from. But I think you have to divert this from not obeying European law, because while they were not coming, it was functioning pretty well and people obeyed. But now with this pressure on Europe, it's just not working in the legal framework we have at the moment.
So the scale has surprised us, not the situation as such. I'm seeing a fantastic comment, kind of legal, that Schengen is a sorrowful unfinished business of the Treaty of Amsterdam. No internal borders, while external borders depending on the protection from the member states. Thank you, legal, very well. I like it. I think we could use it in our future discussion. Okay. So we have the economics. We are going to lose lots of money if we kill the idea that we are so happy about. In general, we are happy about. We could have predicted the situation. I would myself still, controversially, but I would still say that we were ignoring, we Europeans were ignoring the symptoms of migration to come. I would say more. Now we are ignoring the climate migration that is coming to Europe straight from Africa, but that's another point. And we have faced this situation that was completely beyond capacities. And we became hysterical.
Yeah.
And now we are hysterical. And now we are entering politics, I would guess. Not touching the economics and law anymore. Security. Is it really about security primarily? That now Schengen is seen as a threat to our security, that we are, because of not having borders properly protected, that we are allowing people who can be dangerous to us. Would that be true? Yeah.
Well, I think putting it that way is a bit of an overreaction, because
Yes.
I think we can still have a very secure Europe, letting refugees come in, and it just hides the problem itself. I mean, we have very good databases within the European Union that that every country can feed, and that we can put our data on judicial side, on police side. So no, I think Europe is not getting insecure.
Christian, maybe you have a different opinion. I would be still saying that I'm hearing it so often that this is a threat to the security of the European citizens if we do not protect the borders properly.
Well, I'm no security expert, but I don't think that the controls internally are needed to provide security. I mean, one argument that has been frequently made is what do we do in the case of a Paris-style attack? Had there been border controls between France and Belgium, could you have caught the culprits quicker? Well, probably in the case of a Paris-style attack, it does make sense to carry out controls to try to find the culprits, of course. But maybe the national borders are actually not the best place to do that, because, well, maybe you want to focus on the immediate surroundings of Paris. That might be even more effective. I think the only reason why we sort of have this reflex to return to the protection of borders is sometimes that we might not trust the country to which we border to deal effectively with its internal security. And now we have to, the next step then is, of course, to think, why don't we trust them? I mean, is it that they are not capable enough? Or are they actually good at what they're doing and we're just not realizing it? I'll leave the answer to some security expert, but it seems to me that controls are probably not the answer to the security problem, and even if there should be controls as an immediate response to some attack, then maybe there are more efficient strategies to implement them than reintroducing partly Schengen.
Which is still economically a wrong decision.
Beg your pardon?
Still, it would have economic consequences anyway. You said that we are to, at the end, we would be introducing partly the Schengen only. I'm just confusing myself.
I'm sorry. I can only hear you very badly for some reason. I don't know.
Could you please repeat your last sentence?
Oh, right. Yes. Well, what was my last sentence? I think controls are probably not the way forward. I'm pretty sure that there are more efficient ways of guaranteeing internal security. And even if in the response to an immediate crisis, controls should be necessary, maybe there is a more effective way to implement them than partly reintroducing Schengen or partly reintroducing controls at the national borders.
Okay. Partly, for me, means still the economic cost, but we will get back to it. Kia.
Just one aspect to that, and also the border controls are not guaranteeing checking every person that actually crosses the border.
Yeah.
That is a point that I always see regarding the whole terrorist debate, because it's like when I have the border Austria-Germany and you go through there on the Autobahn, it's maybe 1 out of 20, 50 cars, they stop. So you can never say just with border controls you can make countries a lot more secure, because terrorists or people that mean bad and harmful can still find ways to get through.
That's the point. That's the point, I would say. That's the point. But we have a question, Kiev, to you from the public. To what extent Dublin rules are followed by member states during the refugees crisis? Would you be ready to tackle on this?
Well, I'm not an expert on all European countries, so I couldn't definitely say to what extent Dublin rules are followed by every member state.
Please try.
But I think Dublin rules.
Because I believe it is about the Christian was mentioning, or you, that it is about this first country, the first European country should serve as the checking point, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that that we failed with, that many of our European border countries stopped with this implementation exercise, and they probably, of course, as to the scale of the whole phenomena, they were completely not capable of serving as a first country, and then the flows of people were simply marching through Europe, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was a wave through approachment, like every country, starting with the border countries, let them just continue going until they have reached their goal, usually Germany, Austria, France, or the Scandinavian countries. And so this is definitely not following Schengen rules. And also that countries like Germany, for example, didn't send them back also, wasn't following Dublin rules. But I think that was a very exceptional scenery. So
you are gently saying that everybody mixed up everything with everything, and everybody put something to this mess.
Pretty much, yes.
We have said that this crisis was foreseeable, and I think the failure of the Dublin system was also foreseeable. The Dublin had been negotiated for years, and it was very complicated, and I suppose many countries were not happy with the results of those negotiations, because, well, I've already said it, the free-riding effect that I've described also applies to the Dublin. I mean, countries like Germany were particularly happy that refugees arriving in Italy should seek asylum there. Suits them very nicely, but of course the Italians didn't like it very much. And I think it just fires back now that we've had this short-sightedness, and it was foreseeable that in the event of large migration movements, the system would fail. So the debate probably has to focus around, okay, let's accept that system doesn't work, and let's think about something else, something that does work, and something that actually is a fair share of the burden, and that all countries, that is a coordination effort that all countries can subscribe to.
And look, Christian, you got a question that is referred to you personally. What about the ever-recurring issue of whether to create a European army?
Well, I'm getting quite far away here from economics, but I mean, sort of the only common sense answer I can give is I don't think the purpose of an army is to, well, ultimately, of course, it is the purpose of an army to protect the borders, but mostly in the event of a war. In peacetime, normally, I think borders are protected by border protection agencies. So I'm not sure that we need a European army to have a better protection of the borders. I think what is a way forward probably is to give a stronger role to the Frontex, the European Border Agency, enlarge its mandate, its capacity, maybe the organizational structure. And I think this is probably, I mean, as we know, this is a difficult time for Europe, and it's very hard to make big leaps forward. And a European army is probably too large a leap to be realistic. But improving a policy that is already existing is probably much less controversial and much more feasible. So I suppose that would be a way forward.
And I believe that Professor Peter Balasz, who was in a previous panel, he was referring to his experience of a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, going to two different buildings for two different kinds of meetings on the same issues, both in Brussels, but one EU, one NATO. which is also, I think, part of the could be the part of the solution when talking the security of Europe. But I'll try again with the politics. So what happened? Why at all are we sitting here and discussing the future of Schengen that was always seen as the biggest achievement of the EU? It was never controversial as the Eurozone was. It was always the good thing, the basic good thing that we have from the EU.
Yeah. Well, I still...
What has happened that we have to discuss the future of it? Christian.
Yeah, I think the problem we have is actually not a problem that has to do with Schengen properly. Schengen is unfortunately just roadkill of a different issue, which is the failure of a common migration policy. Nobody has, as far as I know, anything against Schengen. I think it is a very popular policy and most people do want to keep it. That's why I sort of said in my introductory statement, I mean, reminding people of the costs of leaving Schengen is sort of stating the obvious. That was the easy answer. There is probably a more complicated one to make, and that is sort of taking a step back. I think the bigger issue is that over a couple of years, we have seen a dramatic loss of confidence in each other amongst European countries, and that has led to a decrease in solidarity. Potentially, this is an arguable thought, but I think there is some merit in it. It has all started with the euro crisis. The euro crisis has fundamentally undermined the way we think about our European partners. Those that are debtors think that the creditors are not being solidaric with them. Those that are creditor countries believe that the debtors are behaving irresponsibly and not reforming enough. So both sides are unhappy. And this distrust, which originated in the economic area, has grown and has evolved to other policy areas as well. And if we don't find a way to rebuild this trust and be able again to establish proper solidarity between European countries, I don't see how we can be better together, because that is a prerequisite for any European policy to work.
Would you help us with giving some figures, like, again, the money to be earned? Because maybe this is the argument that we are lacking.
Yeah.
The whole line of discussion that we are lacking, that we are only discussing the threats and the burden and the quotas to share the burden, and everybody is so tired and so much sacrificing from the European side. Economically, purely economically, there are some questions like this on the screen as well. What would be the benefit of allowing to the EU flows of new migrants from wherever of the world? Maybe this is the way to
well,
explain.
that's a complicated question. When you hear very different opinions from different experts. Of course, in the short run, refugees are mostly costly. They need to be lodged, they need to be fed, they need to be integrated somehow. So yes, of course, that will cost money. In the long term, though, there might be potential benefits. They might actually get integrated. They're part of the workforce. It is a good thing, potentially, that most of them are young, because that means they'll contribute to the social security systems, which in many countries which are in demographic decline are under pressure. So, as very often in economics, you have to see which effects dominate the other. And we have done some calculations for Germany, and we expect in the long run the effects of the immigration Germany has had so far to be positive, and quite strongly so. The costs that are associated to it in the short term are not spectacularly high. That is something that a prosperous country like Germany can shoulder. There might be a different argument to be made in a different country, but at least for Germany, this is probably going to be beneficial in the long run.
But would it be fair to say that financial investment is required in the short term, but the financial benefit is expected in the longer term, right? So it's like with each and every investment
I agree.
you were doing, right? So what should be done here? What should be done? We have to put some order to this mess. And what would be the legal advice of yours?
That's a hard question, since this problem is so multidimensional. I have to go back to one point you made earlier, when you said it was foreseeable that Dublin and the Schengen acquis wouldn't work. I think, or that it is a failure, you said. I don't think they are a failure. I think in themselves, these legal systems are, I mean, you can do better on a few points always, but in the whole thing, I think they're very good. I think the problem is the transformation in real life, because we need manpower and we need common policies based on solidarity to actually fulfill our legal system. Like, for example, when we have thousands and thousands of refugees coming into our border countries, it's not Greece's border. It is the border of Germany, it is the border of Austria, it is a European external border. So I believe that we all, based on solidarity, have to find ways to meet these people at the external borders. For example, establish more hotspots. It was said earlier in the opening debate that the hotspots are a very good thing, but we just don't have many enough of them. So this is one thing. I think it will cost a lot of money, it will cost a lot of manpower to establish a system on the European external borders, but it also, as you have stated earlier, costs a lot of money not doing that, letting them through, and then closing internal borders. So this is one of the things I think really has to be worked on.
So let's pretend that we are politicians. How would we convince our citizens, our electorates? How would we convince that for the moment it is mess, we need to invest more money? Sorry guys, no money for any other things that we have promised before.
Well, the best argument is the economy. I mean, I really think it is. I mean, it is security. In one way, I think that really works with the population. And then it is the economy. I think those are the arguments that work the most. Because then we have other arguments like tourists. They will stay away facing internal border problems, or we have a lot of commuters within the European Union that cross the border every day to go to work. They bring income into the area they live in and into the area they work in. But if they have to be in a traffic jam every day for 2 hours trying to cross the border, the system is not going to work anymore. So I think there has to be a lot more explaining to the people what it actually means, not having a Schengen system with open borders within the EU.
That's a good point. Let's stop for a second as we are having a open poll now. So please use whatever devices you have with you to vote. Okay, so we are in the club of the Schengen enthusiasts. I understand now that we are just commonly worrying about the future of this. I would still say the biggest possible achievement of the EU. Okay, we got some critical, so...
and just one thing I just wanted
Absolutely.
to add, I'm sorry. What I don't think is going to solve the problem is just relying on a EU-Turkey agreement.
Me neither.
Because, for example, because for a while this may work, but you can't rely the whole system on another country outside the EU.
True, absolutely. But again, going back to what we have, and maybe a bit drifting from this argument that have we obeyed or not obeyed the law that we had, we also had many institutional solutions that we were or not using to the best possible extent. And I mean Frontex, the agency that we have for years already, funded from the European money to protect the external borders, that is simply... that could work more. This is the way I would like to phrase it. But probably we're also having a better financial means for this, but Frontex is basically an institution that was created to protect the borders not only in the land but also in the sea, which is the one solution to be somehow improved. Then I fully agree with you that it is not only the EU-Turkey agreement that is going to work there. Then the issue of that came from the public, that the common borders cannot be only protected by the singular member states, right? That we really have to have a common effort there. Plus the system of the hotspots and the system of really providing the not only the help but the fair European treatment on the borders of Europe. I would call it this way, and that would be like a first steps to be taken. Anything I'm forgetting now about this very first steps to be taken? Huge cost, I know, but this is something like, if we were to organize it perfectly, that would be like the very first to be done. And then in the long term, again, Christian, you're an expert. Economic benefit-oriented, maybe this would be precisely the goal of it, but the migration and integration of migrants, the policy, on the EU level or on the member states level? Because we are touching here also the subsidiarity as such. And we are touching, this issues that are just, accumulating in a voting that our British colleagues are going to take in few days, whether to have the ever closer union, whether to be just working together. So in the long term, how you would phrase the policy, how you would phrase it also for the politicians, that they could easily, jump onto it, in a sense that they could easily take it in this awkward time of having different difficult languages describing the situation as it is. Think of something positive, please.
Well, on your first question, I mean, whether we need, or it's better to have national immigration policies or a more European version of it? That's a very difficult question to ask. I mean, there are good arguments to be made either way. You could say that it is good to have a national immigration policy because every country has different needs, and they're best equipped to define what these needs are and what kind of immigration they would like. On the other hand, we have the single market. We have a free movement of labor. We use these processes to achieve economic convergence, and immigration might also be part of that larger picture. And given the two arguments, I suppose probably the best thing is to adopt some middle ground, to have a harmonization, but maybe not a completely unique system for the whole thing. That sounds like a typically European compromise.
Thanks. Kia, any ideas? You're working for Madame Merkel, and you need to help her, with the message. She's going out to the panel like hours in a half an hour, and you are just checking the notes. So what should be the message?
What should be best? It's hard. I mean, you said most of the points that are actually, for me, the most important issues on that chapter. For me, a lot relies on solidarity and on the change of view of the people. Because what I always say, and it may be naive or whatever, but I always think or try to ask back, imagine how it would be if we didn't have European integration, if we didn't have Schengen and so ever. What would happen? Would you live like this? And then most people would say no, but it's just not enough explaining.
Okay, so education, you're saying. The more awareness raising, probably at both levels, I mean, the European level and the member states level. And I do agree. I always believe that we are dramatically afraid of things that we just simply have no idea about. And with a better learning, it's less fear, for sure. Don't you have I know that you're experts and you don't want to get into politics, but what if I said that all of this is also very much connected with the lack of political leadership? That this is our European problem at the moment? Again, somehow.
I think you have a disconnect between the leadership and the people. I suppose part of the problem that Europe presently faces is that it's perceived as this big elitist Brussels machine, which is on some bureaucratic autopilot and doesn't really care about what people feel. Many people don't feel associated with the European project as such. Hard to find ways to address that, but why is it that sort of the core of the democratic mechanism of the European Union, the European Parliament, gets so little attention? Why do so few people go and vote for the European Parliament? So probably we need to strengthen the democratic element in the European Union to give people the feeling they are part of it, and it's not just some big space station that is far away from the people. Also, linked to this, there's a fundamental problem now with the role of the Commission. Is it just the guardian of the treaties, or is it a quasi-government that is having political initiatives? This isn't quite resolved. I mean, Juncker has said that he is the president of a political commission, whatever that's supposed to mean. But if it is a political animal, which would be fine for me, then it should be closer connected to the people. They should have a stronger feeling like that they have an influence on who is actually governing Europe and what this government does. I suppose these are very important things to overcome the disconnect. I think there is actually leadership. I don't think we have, well, yes, we do have a lack of leadership. We have a lack of ideas presently. But I think if we had good ideas and leadership, I'm not sure if the situation would be so much better, because this leadership doesn't really transmit. It's fine to have leaders, but you need people to follow. And they are likely to follow when they think that the leader is leading them in the direction in which they want to go.
Good point. There was one comment at the previous session that I liked a lot, that someone clearly expressed his or her fears that the British voting is a voting on ever closer union, and if they vote no, the European institutions would turn to ever closer union indeed, which would in the end somehow provoke the whole collapse of the European project, which is a interesting way of understanding this, and it can be kind of probable, I would say, seeing the dynamics of the politics in the EU. But maybe we should leave the politics. We got some criticism. At the end, I believe that the poll was that it was something, as far as I remember, something about 11% of those who were a bit skeptic as to the Schengen system, and much more for the option of redefining the internal borders. And I would like to ask for that kind of critical questions, critical as to the, oh my God, that's the huge difference. And it was 100% at the beginning. Maybe is there anyone in the room who would like to use the traditional way of asking the questions to the panelists and or to express some criticism? Because I believe that we do not have enough dynamics in the panel, as we are the fans of Schengen, aren't we? So any questions, critical questions from the audience? We basically touched all of those.
There's one.
There's one there.
We have a second poll.
No, we have one in the audience.
And we have someone helping with the mic. Super.
Thank you very much. My name is Tamás Latman. I'm from the Institute of International Relations here in Prague. Actually, my question would be a sort of like a follow-up to the unfinished business comment on the wall concerning the Dublin regulation. My question would be, could we say that actually what happened now with the migration crisis was the first really serious pressure or push to this system, which has been created in around 1997, calculating with the effects of that crisis that was going on then. And now, clearly it seems that this system just has failed. It could not resist, it could not work under the current pressure. So my question at this point, would it be possible to rethink the Dublin regulation and the whole Dublin structure? The most important criticism being it puts the burden unevenly on member states of the European Union. And while it's understandable, it's completely clear that there is the good reason for that. But politically, for example, with Central and Eastern European member states, you can see that they just refuse to operate the system. This is political, I understand, it's completely political. But could you say that probably a reform or a rethinking of the Dublin structure could help the current situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody feeling for expressing some criticism, support?
In the very back.
No. So in the meantime, we have a poll, which I believe is to prove.
We have somebody in the very back.
Okay, there is somebody in the very end.
Yes, I have a question concerning in terms of economics. Is it beneficial for the EU to accept Turkish citizens to enter the Schengen or not? Thank you.
I'm not quite sure.
Christian. Exactly, must be for you.
I suppose it is, sorry. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I mean, is that going to have... Well, okay, if you liberalize the visa process for Turkish citizens and they get a visa waiver thing, there will be, of course, increased traveling activity from Turkish people coming to Europe. Whether that is going to generate any economic effects, except for maybe a little more tourism, I just don't think it has much of an effect. We already have a free trade area with Turkey, so this, as far as the movement of goods is concerned, that is already in place. So my feeling is that economic effects of a visa liberalization are not going to be very, very strong.
Kia? Any comments?
No. Perfectly said.
I would comment on the first intervention, if I may. I would myself say that yes, indeed, the crisis. I don't like to call it the crisis. The so well foreseen, expected, but still so much surprising situation with the migration flows happening and just getting bigger and bigger for the last year, I believe, but it's happening for much longer, indeed has provoked the discussions on the condition of the EU in general. We keep saying that the EU is stronger after each of its crises, and that this is the history of the European integration, which is very probably the truth. The thing is that it was never to such extent that the crisis was causing the discussion of quitting the whole idea. Mm-hmm. And this is the threat that I'm seeing, the risk that I'm seeing myself. So for the moment, and to touch again on this comment that we have on the last panel, I believe that really the reaction should be ever closer union. But the ever closer union apparently is the only concept that is completely not possible politically at the moment, in a sense of the discussion that the political leaders are having with their electorates. The best idea ever has become too risky in the sense of even discussing it. It was the critical situation. I still don't want to call it the migration crisis, but the critical situation, the difficult situation, caused that the EU as a project has been diminished. We have to remind to ourselves that the Schengen is not a symbol, it's just the best part of the EU ever. And we have to have balance defending the idea for the future, which is crazy by definition. And then the big question would be, what's next? But I still believe that this is the easiest part to discuss it. And also, due to the results of the poll, for most of you, the economic aspect of Schengen is still the most important, not diminishing the security issues, but I would agree with Kia that we should not be overreacting, right? There are still many tools that we just have to use better to improve the security within the Schengen area. But the benefits, the economic benefits that we're getting out of it are still much, much higher than the security threats that we may be facing. So the future would be explaining to everybody, sorry to pointing at you, Christian, but this is your job, explaining to everybody how much would we lose if not keeping on Schengen system. And the job for us would be to think of new legal and practical solutions on how to deliver this. But as I said, I believe that this is what I'm getting. We are having so many institutions or solutions in place, right? Mm-hmm. We are having the Frontex. We are having the ideas of having the hotspots. We have to work closely with Turkey, but not only with Turkey. And please do not feel happy with whatever we are going to gain now, because I'm myself expecting a much bigger flows of people coming to Europe due to climate change. So, any comments? This is probably because we don't have this fourth colleague of ours who would be controversial and bringing controversies to the discussion. But as I said, from the very beginning, I realized that we are the Schengen fans, so it's very difficult to invent anti-Schengen arguments. If there are no comments from the floor, from the audience, from the floor, anything else you should add? You would like to point out?
Believe in Europe.
Better together, right?
Better together.
We cannot say ever closer union anymore, so better together maybe could be the good solution. And with this, let me just thank you for participating in our panel, and I believe that we are closing today with the optimism for not only for Schengen but for the future of the EU. Thank you.
Thank you.